Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Last week I was showing you what I was planning on doing, and now I'm going to complete this task. So, took a little longer than I expected. I apologize for that. This is an application that you can take and modify and do anything else you like with, and it's a basic template to keep track of a list of people's names, emails, and phone numbers. You can add addresses, a whole bunch of other things if you like. So this is basically the finished result of everything that I put together, and I'm going to take a look at the code that I used to make all this happen. So we'll start with our index file. The index file starts with our normal HTML tags, and then we have in here the PHP code that says require DPL client class.php, and then it says set client as a new DPL clients, and then it says client run, and then you have the end body tag and the end HTML tag. And then if I come over to my included file, you'll see that it starts out the class DPL clients, has within the class, these are global elements that are used within the class itself. And so these are variables. Our first variable is called action, which we have code to handle a list, handle adding a client to the tracker, to save a new or an edited client, and then a sample, which will generate a sample of all the names of 10 names. So you could run that multiple times if you want a large sample set. Anyways, we're going to start off here, come down through the code here. And so the first thing we do is we set the server name, the username, the password, and the database name to these variables. And we have a private variable called con. By making these private, it means that any code outside of this, which is over here, see, you couldn't change within the DPL clients any of the variables that are in here, like the database name, from within this point, because these are private variables. So they can only be set and changed from within the class itself. So then we have a function, one function in the entire thing called run. And run basically comes through, and the first thing it says is if action is set, set it to whatever the action is. And if it's not set, then assume they want to show a list of all the clients that are listed in the database. So the first thing we do after that is we open up the SQL server, throwing it in the server name, which is the same as up here, the username, which is up here, the password, And you're going to have to change this to whatever your password is on your host, on your database manager, and the database name, which is clients DB. So if you wanted this to not be clients, maybe it's friends DB, then you would change that. And that would change the whole thing to be a totally new thing. All of this has to be created in the PHP MySQL as well. So if you have issues trying to do that, I'll leave you the SQL in the notes, in the comments for this video, so that you can create the SQL. You can create the database on your PHP MySQL server. So, and then it says to connect to the server. If there's an error, show the error, and die means stop processing, so none of the code after the word die will be executed. Otherwise, we take the action that's in there twice. So that was a typo on my part. I apologize. I'm going to remove that. So it says if this action equals sample, then we're going to create sample data for a set of records. So we're going to choose first names, male first names, and female first names. And then we're going to make an array of last names. And then we're going to make an array of email domains that you can have for your sample set. And then for 10 times, between 1 and 10, it's going to have a random female name, male name, last name. It's going to choose a gender of male or female, and it's going to select a random phone number and a random email name. And then it puts all these together down here. The name becomes the first name plus the female first name and the last name if the gender was 0. And it becomes the first letter of the first name and the full last name, and then the randomized email domain, and it throws all that together. And if it's a male, it does the same thing but with the male first name. Then it adds it to the table. It inserts into clients, sets the name to whatever the name string is, email to whatever the email string is, phone to the phone string. And if that is successful, it will say record added successfully. And then we come down to here, and if it's save, it says take the data that was on the form on the screen and bring it into our program. And then depending upon whether an ID is set, that tells the system whether to update, as it says right there, or to insert, as it says right there. And then it does one of these two things, and then it gives you positive response if it was successful, or a error response if it was not, and it tells you what the error is. And if this action is edit, get the data from the table, so it has to say select all the data from clients where the ID equals the current ID that was passed in. And so it grabs all the data from that record in the table, and it in turn sends it all out. And you'll see that the code over here is, we create a form in HTML, we echo that out to the screen, and I'll show you how all this is working in a moment. And it throws the actual values of the ID, the name, the email, and the phone, and puts it into the form. And this is the list action. And the list, and only one of these sections is actually executing each time you're going through the different phases of working with the application. So when we're doing a list, it says select all the fields from clients, and the result is passed in from the SQL query. And then if there's more than 0 rows, then we output the data in a table structure. And the data table structure is, we put a reference to add a new client at the very beginning. And notice action says add. Then we have HTML of the table border being 1. Then we have a table row, a table header, all the information we need for that. And then while row equals result, and we do fetching an associated array. An associated array goes into the variable called row, and within row we have the associated array with ID, name, email, and phone number, so that these are different elements of that array. And then we do the end table. And then we come down a little further and it says add. And add is pretty much like edit. The only thing is everything is blank. So all the variables are just double quotes. And then at the very end, we close the connection to the database. And that's the whole story. That's everything that is being accomplished. And now we will look at how all this stuff works. So if I add a client, I get my blank screen. ID is read-only, so that it doesn't matter. So you put in your name, email, and phone, and when you click save, it adds this record to the table. And then if I click on any of these names, I get to change the name or the email or the phone number to anything else that I like, and then click on save. We did not do a delete or a clear, but if you go into your PHP MyAdmin, you can go into Clients DB and do anything else you want. So if we wanted to add an address to this, we would go into the structure and we would add a field. And we'll call it address. And that's a variable character of, we'll say 30. And then we hit save. Now we have a new field called address. So now if I go back into the program, then everywhere the fields are referenced, we would have to add the word address. And the easiest way to find all those sections is to find where email is. And then we change and that would add address to the form, to the add form. So it's as simple as that. You'd have to do that one time each for the list and for the save and etc., etc. So that's the basic how-to of how do you make a list and make it so that you can set up an interface so that someone can go in and make changes to additions, subtractions, and little nice point is that this is running on my local machine right here. And if I wanted to access it from another machine, it just takes a couple of DNS settings to be able to allow another machine on the local network to be able to connect to this machine as a server and use all the data from this machine. And so making a networked application with multi-users sharing the data is a rather simple thing to do. So if that's your goal in life, then have at it and ask me any questions you may run into. So I will see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. It has been absolutely a pleasure for me. I hope you enjoyed it too. Take care. Have a great weekend.